everybody. It's Kelly Russell, the Rock Your Joy Coach. Thank you so much for being with me today and welcome to my channel. So, this week's topic is selfishness versus self-fullness, which is a term that I love that I have never heard anywhere else except for the Course in Miracles. And I love it because I hear from so many people, as a coach and a therapist, people talk to me a lot about how they feel like they're being selfish if they do virtually anything for themselves. If they're not constantly, running themselves ragged and deferring to everyone else in their lives and subverting themselves and their own needs and putting their self-love in a position of low priority, somehow that is supposed to be what we're really supposed to be doing. And if you don't do all of that, then you're being selfish. So the first thing that I will say, as judgmental as it might sound, is that anybody that's expecting you to put their needs before yours, that's to me kind of the definition of selfishness. But we have this like go-to idea. It's another part of this ego twisted definitions of some of the spiritual truths in various traditions that I think has caused us to misperceive what is selfish and what isn't selfish, and what is self-love and self-care and self-fullness. So I love in chapter 7 of the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles, in part 9 in the first paragraph, I love how Jesus says this: selfishness is of the ego, but self-fullness is of spirit, because that is how God created it. The Holy Spirit is in the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit, mediating between them, always in favor of spirit. To the ego, this is partiality, and it responds as if it were being sided against. To spirit, this is truth, because it knows its fullness and cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. So the ego is always coming from a place of scarcity, right? Scarcity and lack and limitation and not enough, and that whole idea of partiality and being sided against, and as if it's being ganged up on. And I think the idea of selfishness goes right along with that, is that when we're told we're being selfish, I think that's coming from somebody else's, quote unquote, somebody else. We're all one, but we're appearing as separate beings. Somebody else's ego's idea of what we should be doing, right? Rather than coming from the spirit. And when we perceive ourselves or someone else as being selfish, it's the same thing. So if we're coming from a place of love and we're coming from our spirit, then we're never going to perceive ourselves or anyone else as being selfish. Because selfishness, it's a judgmental term. It's a condemning term of attack. And so if we see ourselves not through the lens of scarcity and limitation and littleness and not enough, but if we instead see ourselves, as this chapter is suggesting, that we look at ourselves as extensions of God, having every quality that God has, having every characteristic. I was telling somebody this the other day, that they were asking me, well, what does that mean, that we have every quality that God has? And I described it as if you're in the ocean and God is the ocean and we're the waves, and you take a bucket and you scoop up ocean water and you analyze it and you compare the water in the bucket to the water in the ocean, it's the same water. But the wave, the water in the bucket, or the wave, came from the ocean. The ocean didn't come from the bucket or from a wave. And so we are extensions of God in that way. We are creations of God in that way. And God creates by extension, but we are exactly the same. And so just as we wouldn't characterize God as being selfish, right? We characterize God as being loving and generous and abundant and giving and eternal and pure light and pure love and pure peace and pure joy. And all of those qualities, those are qualities of us as well. It's just when we believe in a false self, when we believe the ego's bullshit that's telling us that we are small, limited, scarce, that we're lacking, that we need to be in fear, that there's not enough, that we're not taken care of, we're not provided for. And we believe, when we invest in those ideas, and we believe that, that is what causes us to contract and behave in a way that is selfish, meaning not believing that we have everything and that we are everything and that we are abundant and we are prosperous and we are already in possession of whatever it is we believe we lack, whether it's we believe we are lacking of love, or we believe love can be taken away from us, we believe we're going to be abandoned, we think that someone is going to reject us, or that we don't have the ability to be able to obtain what we need in this world. Then we can act in a way that looks like it is selfish. But it's not really even that so much that gets depicted as selfishness. In the experience that I have with people, it's more when people put themselves in a priority of practicing love toward themselves. That's when they're told they're selfish, or they feel like they are being selfish. When they take time for themselves, they treat themselves well and take care of themselves and give themselves gifts and services and so forth that make them feel good, instead of doing those exact things always for other people. Somehow that is selfish, which to me is just so upside down. The Course in Miracles, when it talks about self-fullness in this chapter, it's talking about extension of the love of God, and that the love of God is fullness, it's allness. And for us to, how we experience our fullness and our allness as part of God is extending love, which the Course in Miracles calls our creations. So our creations are not our children, they are not bodies, they are not paintings and art that we make and beautiful things. Those are all great, and those do come from our creative impulse. But our creations, remember, anything that in the world that can that can be destroyed, anything in the world that is not eternal, which means every material thing and bodies and everything else that's here is eventually not going to be here. It's not eternal. The one thing that is real in this world, the one thing that is eternal, is love. That's the only thing that is real, and it's the only thing that is eternal. And so that's the only thing that we're truly able to create, is our loving thoughts. So we turn our creative energy toward our loving thoughts, and we extend those loving thoughts toward our brothers. That is when we are in our creativity. That is what our creations are. That's what our expression of love is. It's by extension. And so it's okay for us to also turn that love and that extension toward ourselves, because we are connected to our brothers. We are all one being. And so taking care of you, caring for you, loving you, sending loving thoughts toward you, forgiving you is the same thing as taking care of me, sending loving thoughts toward me, forgiving me. And as A Course in Miracles says, because we can't be separate from God or each other, anything that we do or think toward a brother, we are doing and thinking toward ourselves. So if we hold attack thoughts toward our brothers, or if we perceive them as being in some way less than or bad or doing something that they shouldn't be doing or saying, or having a judgment or condemnation toward them, those are all considered attack thoughts, and we will then that's a way of attacking ourselves. We can't escape that. So loving our brothers, seeing our brothers as whole, as innocent, as pure love, as pure light, seeing them as calling for love as opposed to acting in a way that we think is wrong or bad. We can just see that as a call for love. In any case, no matter what our brothers do, love is always the answer. Love is always the right thing to respond with. And so we can also turn that love toward ourselves, in being loving toward ourselves, treating ourselves well, seeing ourselves as innocent, seeing ourselves not as bad or wrong or guilty or shameful in any way. And so that's really, we just need to be able to understand that selfishness is of the ego. So when we are harboring any kind of attack thoughts toward our brothers, those are going to be rebounded onto us. And we are going to then feel like we are in scarcity and lack and limitation and not enough, and it's not fair, and see ourselves as less than and weak and victimized, and see our brothers as guilty and attacking and perpetrators and all of that. That is all going to keep us in a place of selfishness with a small s, selfishness, where we are perceiving our brothers and ourselves as without, as not having, as the embodiment of scarcity in all ways. When we see our brothers, and as I said, as having everything and being extensions of God, and having every quality that God has, even if that is temporarily obscured to us. And it's obscured to us when we are looking through the body's eyes and not looking through our true vision. But when we know the truth of our brothers, which is that they are the same waves of the ocean that we are, that they possess every quality of God, that that's who they are, we see with our self-fullness, we embody our self-fullness. And we experience our self-fullness. And when we come from that place and we know that we are everything and we have everything because our brothers are everything and have everything, then that is what helps to completely correct our perception and experience of scarcity and lack and limitation and not enough. And I talked about this from a financial perspective last week, but it doesn't just have to do with finances. It has to do with everything that we think that we don't have, that we're missing, that we are without, or is not available to us in the world. Whether it is things, whether it is relationships with other people, whether it is a different situation, a different job, a different way of living in the world, a different career, something we want to do, someplace we want to go, whatever it is, if we're seeing ourselves as having everything and being everything, we're seeing ourselves in a place of self-fullness, that is going to be available to us. Even if we're still in the dream, as we're awakening, we can still have a self-full dream as opposed to a selfish dream. So that's my message for you today. And if you want some resources to help you, so I'm going to tell you about a few things. First of all, the biggest resource that you can use from A Course in Miracles to be able to perceive your brothers in a way that you see their innocence and thus are able to see your own is to practice the Course in Miracles version of true forgiveness, which is where you forgive whatever it is that you see with the body's eyes being demonstrated by your brother in the world, and you remember the truth of them, and you see them through true vision. And so doing that practice of forgiveness is essentially, I'm forgiving you, whoever you are, or whatever you're forgiving, because I remember that you didn't do anything wrong. I remember there's nothing to forgive. I remember that this, whatever I'm experiencing, is occurring in a dream, that I am projecting this, that I made it up, and that it's playing out the way that my dream is playing out. And I remember the truth is that you and I are one, that we are creations of God, we are extensions of God, that we are of the same light. And I forgive myself for dreaming this dream. I ask Spirit to help me see this situation differently, and I release it to be healed. And that's the process. And if there, I created a little package called the Homestuck Survival Kit that you can click a link below this video and access. It's free, and it is 3 products. It's a little ebook and a podcast and a meditation, and is all about, I created it during the pandemic because people were all stuck at home with the people they're having relationships with, and there was a lot of conflict and you know, a lot of judgment and condemnation that I was hearing about. But I've kept it because it really applies. It's not just, we don't just feel that way in a pandemic. We feel that way a lot. And so it contains some tools and practices and can just help you to, you know, sort of recalibrate yourself with regard to the judgment and condemnation. And it includes the forgiveness practice. And then last week, I created it's a list of tools and practices that I use with regard to abundance and prosperity, and inviting more of that into your life and into your awareness in the world. And so that's another free download that you can click below this video as well. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. I'm here roughly every week talking about the practical application of A Course in Miracles to your life in some way. So if you have enjoyed the video, please share. And if you'd like to leave a comment, I read everyone. I love hearing from you. You can send me an email. So I'll see you next week. I love you.